Hey. Hi there, it's Mr. Mike for the Mechanicsburg Learning Center with episode 56 of Mr. Mike's Dino-A-Day. I'd like to introduce you to a new animal today called Hypacrosaurus. Hypacrosaurus. Let's show you little old Hypacrosaurus. All right. Let's take a look at him and try to understand what makes him unique. First of all, interestingly enough, Hypacrosaurus looks like a couple other dinosaurs. He looks a lot like Lambeosaurus or Corythosaurus. So, frankly, Hypacrosaurus is not the most unique dinosaur in terms of his physical attributes. All right, he did have a very interesting rounded crest. They've shown him in the past as bipedal, walking on 2 legs. Lately, they've shown him quadrupedal, walking on 4. Please notice this up here. Tall neural spines that may be caused maybe a little bit of a sail, but not much of one. Let's look at him from this angle. Okay, you can see that the spines do stick out a little bit, but the Hypacrosaurus, let's be honest here, is not the most physically different kind of dinosaur out there. There are other dinosaurs that are much more exotic, like the Parasaurolophus, which looks a lot like him. It's a duckbill also, but instead of a rounded crest, he had that beautiful, long, elongated, resonating chamber that perhaps allowed him to make noises and signal the other dinosaurs. We think Hypacrosaurus may have done that also, may have blown some air into this chamber up here, and it would go and maybe signal the other dinosaurs in the area that a carnivore was lurking about. So be careful. Because interesting thing about the way sound travels, a high note travels through the air, low notes travel through the ground. So they could actually feel, if this were a low note coming out of the Hypacrosaurus crest, they could actually feel it in their feet a number of feet away. So they would be able to feel it even better than they could hear it, and that would be some sort of signal that the Hypacrosaurus might use to communicate with the rest of his herd. Definitely an herbivore, by the way he's made. Physiologically, he's just built to be an herbivore with a big belly, smallish mouth, not much teeth, had some chewing teeth on the side. He had a toothless beak, like Iguanodon, so there was nothing up front. His teeth were in his cheeks for him to chew up his food. Okay, so this is Hypacrosaurus. Let's give you some statistical analysis of Hypacrosaurus, more than just maybe how tall he was or how long he was. He was a duckbill. He had the resonating chamber in his head. They think he may have had a little spike back here also. Right back here there could have been one little spike that was not attached to the rest of his crest. So I mentioned the tall neural spines that may have had a little bit of a sail. He was discovered back in 1910 by a famous paleontologist who made some amazing discoveries. His name's Barnum Brown, and he was one of the first, actually the first, to uncover the Tyrannosaurus Rex skeleton. So tremendously important figure in paleontological history is Barnum Brown. So he discovered Hypacrosaurus. Now, let's get to the point. Barnum didn't give it the most, let's say, charismatic or complimentary name. The name Hypacrosaurus means near highest lizard. Near highest. I mean, you got the name Tyrannosaurus Rex, which means tyrant lizard king. That's a pretty descriptive name. Near highest lizard is kind of like saying, nice try, but you're just not big enough. Or better luck next time, lizard. So, yeah, near highest lizard is what it literally translates to, Hypacrosaurus. So he discovers it in 1910, and then Barnum Brown names it in 1913. as I mentioned when we first started, it is related and looks very much like other dinosaurs, Lambeosaurus, Corythosaurus. It's been mistaken for other dinosaurs. When they find a bone that looks like it, they call it this, and then they have to go back and retrace their steps. So it's had a very interesting history. But we have known about it for, quite a long time, over a century. We talk about this, and I love saying this word, the encephalization quotient. That's a $24 word. The encephalization quotient is how we look at the size of the brain versus the rest of the body. So if you have a high encephalization quotient, that means your brain is pretty big compared to the rest of the body. Well, as far as Hypacrosaurus is concerned, he is about in the middle of the pack. Not the tiniest brain, not the biggest, somewhere in the middle. So there wasn't a lot about Hypacrosaurus to distinguish it. So why did Mr. Mike go and write a poem about it? Well, it's one of those things. Sometimes, you have to find something in yourself that makes you stand out. Not just how big your legs were, or are you the fastest runner, or are you the best at doing artwork? This is sort of like saying, Hypacrosaurus, better luck next time. Okay, so some think that it may have had a hump on its back, like a bison, because these neural spines, maybe they supported a fatty hump. That was one theory. That theory has kind of gone to the wayside, and we do think that it probably had this little kind of a sharp spine, if not a full-blown sail. In the 1980s, famous paleontologist Jack Horner, he is the scientific analyst that helps out the Jurassic Park movies. Jack Horner, they discovered nesting Hypacrosauruses, and that meant that they were herding animals. That meant that they stuck together. That meant that they probably raised their kids, and it meant that they returned maybe annually to the same site to lay eggs. The interesting thing, though, that occurred was they took some of these specimens of the eggs and they embedded them in resin to keep them safe and to keep them from becoming further damaged. And it took until about 2010 when one of Horner's students took out these little specimens and started looking at these things closely. And they chipped away. They maybe acid washed them to get down to, get the resin off. And they looked at them under a microscope and discovered something very interesting, extremely interesting, something that had never been seen before, something so unique that when they looked at it, they said, this really can't be what we're looking at, can it? Is this really what we think it is? Well, sure enough, it turned out to be the first specimen ever discovered of dino DNA. Now, DNA is that the genes and the chromosomes that make up who we are and give us physical aspects and make some of us grow horns while others grow tails and grow feathers or have scales. DNA determines what our body looks like, and this is something that we pass on to our children. And DNA had never been discovered in dinosaur remains before, so it was unbelievable. And suddenly, Hypacrosaurus became a very interesting animal. Up to that point, near highest lizard. Now it was the first dinosaur ever that shows the remains of DNA. So isn't that interesting how things can change just like that? So let's read you the story of the Hypacrosaurus. I got up this morning and I was inspired to write it, so that's how recent this is. So recent that I had to highlight some of the words so I know how to put the emphasis on it. So what the moral of the story is, before we get to it, is that don't always judge a book by its cover. Don't judge a dino by its bone size. There could be a lot of interesting things, and you can apply the same kind of logic to yourself. Can you imagine if someone said that you weren't, Jimmy, nice try, but you're not the fastest, or Jenny, I'm sorry, your artwork is very nice, but when you compare it to Vishnu's over here, it's just not even close. That's kind of what happened to Hypacrosaurus. But in the end, Hypacrosaurus one, and so can you. So thank you so much for watching these videos. Thank you for sharing them on Facebook. Thank you for going to Mr. Mike Sgrignoli on YouTube and liking them and subscribing to the channel. Hypacrosaurus by Mr. Mike. So new, hasn't even been illustrated yet. I'll put him right here so we can read to him. How's that? Don't fall asleep, it's not that early. Hypacrosaurus fossils were first found in 1910, and Barnum Brown described for us how large it was back then. And comparing it to what we knew of T-Rex, well, that seemed fair. But once you saw them side by side, they didn't quite compare. And so Brown christened it with this descriptive proper name. We don't believe he meant it as an insult or to shame. It means near highest lizard, which just meant it didn't meet the size and weight required to successfully compete. Just try to think how you'd feel if your name told the tale of how you could not measure up. You'd try, of course, but fail. Forever after, you'd be judged by this one simple fact. You might become depressed because against you odds were stacked. But size has no effect on why I mention him today. It has to do with something that is known as DNA, the code by which we understand our genes and chromosomes. I hope you are impressed I have worked these words into my poems. Now, DNA should last only about 1 million years, but this was so much older it caused scientific cheers. It's rare enough to find a bone of something gone extinct, and rarer still to find something that alters how we think. That's why Hypacrosaurus stands as such a special find. The fact that DNA was found leaves other finds behind. So, Hypacrosaurus should encourage you to try. It's not what others say, it's on yourself you should rely. The Hypacrosaurus goes back to about 75 to maybe 67 million years ago. So for DNA to survive that long is nothing short of amazing. Because as I stated in the poem, DNA usually sticks around maybe a million years. And once something is older than that, there's hardly anything left. So the thing about Hypacrosaurus makes it interesting too, that maybe many of its similar species did, but I thought it was interesting. It laid very spherical eggs about the size of a cantaloupe. So the next time you go to the grocery store with Mom or Dad and you see the cantaloupes, and this could be a few months from now, just look at that and say, wow, that, Mom and Dad, is the famous Hypacrosaurus egg. And that's where we found dino DNA. So thank you so much. I want to thank the Mechanicsburg Learning Center for making this possible. I want to thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing the videos on Facebook. Thank you for subscribing to the YouTube channel, and do so at your leisure. And we will do it again live, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time every day. And we'll see you tomorrow. And for now, let's say good day to Hypacrosaurus.